Tomatoes have been quietly suffering in our refrigerators for decades, while chefs like Alice Waters and home cooks alike swear by the rich, sun-warmed aroma of tomatoes ripened on the counter. Cold storage cuts that process short. Enzymatic reactions responsible for their iconic flavor grind to a halt in chilly conditions, leaving behind a bland, grainy version of what could have been. If you're tired of being lied to, if you're ready to expose the truth they don't want you to know, then don't just watch. Join this fight. Hit subscribe right now so you never miss the facts the corporations hope you'll ignore. Every new video pulls back the curtain a little more, and together we're building a movement they can't silence. Subscribe, stay informed, and let's take back control, one truth at a time. It's not just culinary nostalgia. Science confirms that refrigeration damages their cellular structure and mutes the volatile compounds responsible for taste. What many consider a harmless habit is in reality stripping away the very essence of one of the kitchen's most flavorful staples. This isn't about nostalgia or elitism. It's about matching foods with their natural rhythms to preserve both taste and integrity. From the sugar-converting starches in potatoes to the condensation that ruins coffee beans, each food tells a different story about how it wants to be stored. Meanwhile, items like dairy, eggs, and meat make it clear that cold isn't the enemy, it's a necessity in the right context. The key is knowing the difference. Understanding the science behind food storage not only preserves flavor and nutrients, but also reduces waste and reclaims a sense of respect for what we eat. Let's set the record straight. Just because your fridge has space doesn't mean everything belongs in it. There's a dangerous myth in modern kitchens that refrigeration equals preservation, but for many of the foods we eat every day, that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, cold storage can destroy flavor, ruin texture, and even trigger harmful chemical changes. If you're putting the wrong foods in your fridge, you're not preserving them, you're sabotaging them. Let's start with one of the most misunderstood tomatoes. Tomatoes are not built for the cold. They're sensitive fruits that continue ripening after being picked. That's a good thing. It's how they develop that rich garden-fresh flavor. But once you toss them in the fridge, that natural ripening process grinds to a halt. The enzymes responsible for building aroma and taste shut down. The result? Mealy, bland, lifeless tomatoes. You know exactly the kind. Pale, mushy, zero flavor. That's what refrigeration does. And it's not just theory. This was common knowledge for generations. Tomatoes used to live on windowsills, sun-soaked and respected for their rhythm. We traded that for convenience and paid for it in taste. Now let's talk about potatoes. Cold does something dangerous to potatoes. When stored below 45 degrees Fahrenheit, the starches in potatoes start converting into sugars. That might sound harmless until you cook them. Those sugars interact with high heat to form acrylamide, a compound linked to health concerns, including cancer risk. And it doesn't stop there. Refrigerated potatoes take on a weird, overly sweet flavor and cook unevenly. The better method? A cool, dark, dry place, like a paper bag under your sink. It's not old-fashioned, it's smart. Refrigerating potatoes isn't preserving them, it's degrading them. Next up, onions. Onions are tough on the outside, but they hate cold, humid environments. The fridge traps moisture, and onions absorb it like a sponge. That triggers mold rot and the early release of sulfur compounds. Suddenly, your onions are soft, slimy, and reeking before you even slice into them. The fix is simple. Store onions in a dry, well-ventilated basket at room temperature. Let them breathe. Keep them dry. That's how they last. That's how they hold their flavor and crunch. The fridge doesn't help onions. It accelerates their breakdown. Garlic has its own set of issues. Put garlic in the fridge, and it sprouts fast. Those green shoots aren't just unsightly. They bring bitterness and ruin the smooth, sharp flavor garlic is known for. Worse, refrigeration invites mold to grow beneath the papery skin layers. That's not preservation. It's decay. Garlic wants to be left alone. Room temperature, dry air, good ventilation. That's how you keep garlic from sprouting or rotting before you've even used half the bulb. Refrigeration doesn't delay garlic's decline, it triggers it. And then there's basil, a herb so delicate, cold is practically lethal. Stick basil in the fridge, and it wilts. Its leaves go black, its signature aroma, gone. Basil's cell walls are too fragile for low temperatures. The cold causes irreversible damage almost immediately. If you want basil to last, treat it like a flower, trim the stems, and place them in a jar of water on the counter. That's how you keep it bright, aromatic, and full of flavor. The fridge doesn't preserve basil, it kills it. Coffee is another casualty of misplaced refrigeration. Coffee beans are loaded with hundreds of aromatic compounds, the oils and notes that give coffee its depth, richness, and personality, but expose them to cold and you get condensation, moisture, that breaks down the oils, dulls the aroma, and flattens the taste. Suddenly your premium beans taste like cardboard. That's not storage, it's sabotage. Keep your coffee in an airtight container, in a cool, dark place. Yes, room temperature. That's how you preserve the complexity and soul of every cup. Fridge or freezer, not unless you want stale, lifeless coffee. And finally, honey. Honey does not need refrigeration. In fact, putting honey in the fridge speeds up crystallization. It hardens. It loses its smoothness. It becomes grainy, cloudy, and tough to use. And that's unnecessary, because honey is naturally antibacterial. It doesn't spoil. It can sit at room temperature for years and stay perfectly safe and delicious. It's one of the few foods that never expires. Refrigerating honey isn't protecting it. It's ruining the texture for no reason. Now let's talk about the exceptions, the foods you must refrigerate. First, dairy, milk, cheese, yogurt, all of it. These are biological time bombs if left at room temperature. Dairy is full of fats, proteins, and sugars, and all of it is prime fuel for bacterial growth. Warm temperatures speed that process up. The smell of sour milk, that's bacteria, thriving in a neglected bottle. Refrigeration slows that growth, keeps dairy safe, and maintains texture and flavor. This isn't just about taste, it's about food safety. Milk belongs in the fridge, period. Second, eggs, at least in the US. Here's the deal. American eggs are washed before sale, which strips away their natural protective coating. That coating helps block bacteria like salmonella. Once it's gone, eggs become vulnerable. They need cold, consistent temperatures to stay safe. In Europe, eggs aren't washed, so they can stay on the counter. But in the US, refrigeration isn't optional. It's mandatory for safety. Warm eggs spoil fast. They become risky. If you're keeping eggs on the counter, you're playing with fire. Third, fresh meats and seafood. There's no debate here. Meat and seafood must be kept cold. These are high protein, high moisture foods, perfect environments for bacterial growth. Even an hour at room temperature can start the spoilage process. Discoloration, strange smells, slimy textures, they all show up quickly. Refrigeration doesn't just help, it's essential. It protects structural integrity, slows bacterial spread, and buys you time to prepare or freeze. This is where refrigeration earns its reputation. For meat and fish, the cold is non-negotiable. So where does that leave us? It's about knowing the difference, understanding that refrigeration is not a universal solution. It's a tool, a powerful one, but also a blunt one. For some foods, it extends life and safety. For others, it wrecks everything. You need to think biologically, enzymatically. Foods like tomatoes, basil, garlic, and onions need to breathe, ripen, and rest. The fridge doesn't allow that. It shuts those processes down. It robs them of their natural flavor, texture, and nutrients. Cold can alter chemical structure. Take potatoes. The transformation of starch to sugar is real and dangerous. Or garlic. Refrigeration triggers hormones that start premature growth. Even coffee, its complex flavor depends on fragile compounds that break down in moisture. These aren't old wives' tales, they're biochemical facts. Misusing the fridge isn't just wasteful, it's destructive. Meanwhile, the foods that do belong in the fridge are there for a reason. It's not about personal preference, it's microbiology. Milk, eggs, meat, leave them out, and bacteria thrive. Cold slows them down. That's the goal. That's how you stay safe. This is where tradition and science meet. Older generations knew this. They stored produce the way nature intended, on counters, in baskets, in pantries. They didn't refrigerate everything because they didn't need to, and science now backs them up. We have the data. We know how enzymatic processes work. We know what temperatures trigger spoilage, or kill flavor, or break down texture. We need to stop treating food like it all fits into one category. Start thinking in terms of needs. What does this food require to stay alive, flavorful, and safe? What does it not need? Because mindless refrigeration doesn't just dull taste, it causes waste. We throw away mealy tomatoes, moldy garlic, spoiled onions, crystallized honey, stale coffee, Not because the food was bad, but because we stored it wrong. It's time to change that. Time to store smarter. Respect the rhythm of your food. Learn what thrives in the cold and what dies there. Your taste buds, your wallet, and your health will thank you. If you learned something new today, hit that like button. Share this with someone who refrigerates tomatoes or coffee. Let us know in the comments which food surprised you the most. And if you want more straight facts about how to get the most from your kitchen, don't forget to subscribe. We break myths, not flavor. Let's go even deeper, because once you understand how foods behave outside the fridge, you start to realize that refrigeration has become less about food preservation and more about blind habit. We throw nearly everything in the fridge because that's what we were taught, but rarely do we ask, is this helping or hurting? Take tomatoes again. The minute you put them in the fridge, the cold air disrupts their cell membranes. You don't see it right away, but you feel it when you slice into a soggy, watery mess that used to be a juicy heirloom. The flavor, gone. Texture, wrecked. What's left is a dull, lifeless fruit that tastes like cardboard, all because of a few degrees too cold. Now think about how many times you've bought beautiful tomatoes, only to refrigerate them, ruin them, and toss them a week later. That's not convenience, that's waste. Same story with basil. Cold is like poison for this herb. It bruises easily, wilts fast, and within hours of being in the fridge, the leaves start turning black. It's not because basil is fragile, it's because we're putting it in the wrong environment. Basil comes from warmer climates. It thrives in warmth. That's where its essential oils stay active, where its scent and flavor stay alive. You kill that when you put it in the fridge. Want basil that actually tastes like basil? Keep it on the counter, in a jar of water, like a bouquet. It lasts longer, tastes fresher, and doesn't become sad mush overnight. Garlic suffers the same fate. This bulb is supposed to stay dormant. It's supposed to sleep quietly in a dry, dark space until you're ready to use it, but the cold tricks it into thinking spring has arrived. So it starts to grow right in your fridge. You open the door and find green shoots poking out of the cloves. That sprouting garlic tastes bitter. It's no longer mellow and earthy. It's harsh, acidic, and frankly unpleasant. Worse yet, garlic stored in cold air can trap moisture inside its layers, growing mold you won't see until you peel it back. Again, not preserved, ruined. Let's go back to potatoes for a moment, because the science here is unsettling. When you refrigerate potatoes, the starches begin breaking down into simple sugars. You might think, great, sweeter potatoes, but when you cook them, especially fry or roast them, those sugars combine with amino acids and form acrylamide. This is a compound that research links to potential cancer risks, and it's completely avoidable. Just don't refrigerate potatoes. Store them in a cool, dark place with airflow. That's what they want. That's how they last. Coffee is another perfect example of how we sabotage flavor without knowing it. People freeze or refrigerate coffee thinking it locks in freshness. What it actually does is expose those beans to moisture. Moisture that seeps into the bean, starts dissolving oils, and kills off hundreds of subtle aromatic compounds. The result is coffee that smells dull and brews flat. It doesn't matter if it's single origin or the best roast you've ever bought. If you refrigerate it, you're drinking a shadow of what it could be. Store coffee in an airtight container, away from sunlight, at room temperature. That's how you honor the bean. And then there's honey, nature's miracle food. It doesn't spoil. It doesn't go bad. It literally lasts forever. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient tombs, still edible. So what do we do with this naturally perfect substance? We stick it in the fridge, where it hardens and crystallizes into an unspreadable mess, all because we think the fridge is some magic vault. But with honey, cold temperatures aren't helpful. They're disruptive. Store honey at room temperature. Keep it sealed. Keep it dark, and it will stay perfect indefinitely. Now compare all of that to the foods that do need cold. Milk, for example, left at room temperature, bacteria multiply rapidly. It curdles. It sours. You can't save it. The fridge slows all of that down, keeping milk fresh, safe, and usable for days. Same for yogurt and cheese. These are living foods, full of active cultures and nutrients that spoil fast without cold. Refrigeration isn't just helpful here, it's essential. Eggs. Again, this is about process. In the US, eggs are washed and sanitized before hitting the shelves. That cleaning strips away the protective bloom, the outer coating that shields the egg from bacteria. Once that's gone, the shell becomes porous, vulnerable. Refrigeration keeps harmful bacteria like salmonella from entering and multiplying. This isn't guesswork, it's microbiological fact. Want safe eggs? Keep them cold. Meat and seafood, there's zero room for error here. These proteins are prime real estate for bacterial growth. Leave them out for even a couple hours, and you risk illness. They change color, smell bad, break down fast. The fridge is your only line of defense before cooking or freezing. Refrigeration slows spoilage, maintains texture, and most importantly, keeps your food safe. So why does this matter? Because every time we store food the wrong way, we lose something. We lose flavor, we lose nutrients, we lose money, and over time, we lose trust in the food itself. We start thinking, produce just doesn't last anymore, or this coffee was a waste of money. But the truth is, we're misusing our tools. We're treating all foods the same, when they're not. Refrigeration is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's a tool, and like any tool, it has to be used wisely. Just because something can go in the fridge, doesn't mean it should. Tomatoes are not dairy. Garlic is not meat. Honey doesn't behave like fish. When we store everything by default in the cold, we ignore the biology, the chemistry, the traditions. We override nature's design and pay the price in waste and disappointment. This isn't just about individual choices, it's about breaking bad habits, habits passed down through convenience and marketing. It's about relearning what food actually is, what it needs, and how to help it last longer, not by smothering it in cold air, but by respecting its rhythm. Look at older generations. They didn't have double-door stainless steel fridges with smart sensors and humidity drawers. They had pantries, cellars, baskets. They didn't refrigerate tomatoes. They let them ripen in the sun. They didn't toss onions in the fridge. They stored them in hanging mesh bags. They understood that some foods need air, some need warmth, some need patience. And now, backed by science, we know they were right. We know that cold storage can trigger chemical changes in potatoes, onions, garlic. We know that refrigeration stops tomatoes from developing their flavor. We know it degrades the oil-based aroma in coffee and hardens perfectly smooth honey into gritty crystal. These aren't opinions, they're observable facts. So the takeaway is simple, but powerful. Know your food. Know what needs cold to stay safe, and know what needs room to breathe, to stay alive. Rethink the automatic reach for the fridge. Start treating each ingredient as something alive, because it was, and its afterlife in your kitchen depends on how you treat it. Every time you store a tomato at room temperature instead of the fridge, you're honoring that food. Every time you let garlic rest in a basket instead of chilling in a drawer, you're respecting its biology. Every time you keep coffee away from cold, you're preserving its essence. This knowledge empowers better meals, fresher ingredients, less waste, more flavor. It turns your kitchen from a cold storage facility into a living space where food is respected, not just stored. So here's the challenge. Starting today, take stock of what's in your fridge, pull out the tomatoes, rescue the garlic, free the coffee, give your basil the room to breathe. Start rethinking storage, not as a matter of habit, but as a matter of care. Let's finish this strong, because changing how we store our food isn't just about flavor or saving a few bucks. It's about respecting the ingredients that nourish us. Every tomato you toss in the fridge and forget about, that's lost potential. Every clove of sprouted garlic, that's a missed opportunity for real flavor. Every bag of crystallized honey shoved to the back of the shelf, that's a waste of something that could have lasted forever. And it all comes down to a single truth. We've let convenience overrule common sense. We were sold the idea that refrigeration is the answer to everything, that more cold equals more control, that if we put food in the fridge, it'll behave better, last longer, and somehow become safer by default. But food doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't work that way. Some things need to keep breathing. Some things need to rest undisturbed. The fridge is great, but it's not a magic box, and misusing it has consequences we taste, smell, and throw in the trash every single week. We need to stop blaming the food. It's not that tomatoes are bad now. It's not that onions don't keep like they used to. It's not that coffee loses its punch too fast. No, We're just storing them wrong. Tomatoes want to ripen, garlic wants to stay dormant, coffee wants a dry, dark place to maintain its integrity. These foods aren't failing us, we're failing them with knee-jerk storage habits that don't serve their biology. And the tragedy is that these mistakes are so avoidable. Once you know, you can do better instantly. You can take those potatoes out of the fridge today and store them the right way, cool, dark, ventilated. You can take that basil out of its plastic bowl and let it thrive on the counter, where its aroma stays alive. You can pull those onions out of the crisper drawer and keep them dry and mold-free. No extra tools, no complicated hacks, just understanding and respect. Meanwhile, for the foods that truly need the fridge, like meat, dairy, eggs, we owe it to ourselves to keep them cold and consistent, not just for taste, but for safety. That's where the fridge is non-negotiable. That's where it earns its keep, because when bacteria take over, it's not just food that's at risk, it's your health. So here's the bottom line, not all food belongs in the cold, not all flavor survives the fridge, and not every tradition should be abandoned just because a shiny appliance says so. Use your fridge wisely, use it intentionally, store what needs cold, and let the rest live free. If you've made these mistakes before, you're not alone, but now that you know better, you can do better. Like, share, comment, subscribe, help others break the cycle. Because respecting food starts with how we store it, and it ends with how we enjoy it.